Hi, this is Dr. Paris, and this week we are discussing Buddhism. We'll take a look at the origins of Buddhism, examine the beliefs of Buddhists, we'll look at a couple of examples of Buddhism in pop culture, and finally we'll discuss Buddhism and politics. Now they say you should never mix religion with politics, but in this course you'll discover that there is often a strong connection between the two. The connection between religion and politics is almost impossible to break. Americans often attempt to separate the two, but it is very difficult. We'll find out that the same is true for Buddhism. In discussing the origins of Buddhism, it's important to note that Buddhism came from Hinduism. Later on in this class, we'll learn that, as many of you probably already know, Christianity came from Judaism. One religion often gives rise to another, and each religion gives rise to many different sects. The man who would become the Buddha noticed a problem with Hinduism. He wanted to be free from samsara, and that led him down the path to enlightenment. You remember samsara from our chapter on Hinduism, but the idea of samsara is a bit different in Buddhism. There are several key points to think about when we look at the life of the man who became Buddha. His name was Siddhartha, and he was born into a rich family. His birth shows that he had good karma. Apparently, he had been a good person in his previous life, but he still felt trapped. He was caught in the endless cycle of rebirth that is samsara, and he wanted to escape that prison. So he gave up his riches and became poor. Perhaps being an ascetic would lead him down the right path. Perhaps Siddhartha chose this path because his father had tried to prevent him from seeing any suffering. However, when Siddhartha was confronted with the suffering of the world, he was very troubled. When he became the Buddha, he would discuss how all life is suffering. The main goal for the Buddha was to be free of suffering. Buddha achieved this freedom through nirvana, which Matthews defines as the state of being free of egocentrism and the suffering it causes. Positively, it is joy and peace. Nirvana is a word that we use in English. Many people have heard of Kurt Cobain and the grunge band Nirvana, and people may also use the word nirvana to describe a state of bliss. Another word that has come from Sanskrit to English is the word mantra, which Matthews defines as a special formula of words recited in worship. If you've seen Buddhist monks chanting, they may be saying mantras. In modern English, mantra means an often repeated word, a formula or phrase, often a truism. So we see that our definition of the word is similar, but different from a Buddhist's because we are usually not using the phrase in worship. In this class, always keep in mind how things are similar and how they are different. One example of a mantra or truism we might say is, less is more. Of course, the Buddha may not have totally agreed with that since he chose the middle path, but we'll talk about that more in a moment. Another term you may have heard before taking this class is Dharma. A few years ago, there was a show called Dharma and Greg. Dharma is the name of a woman who is a flower child and a free spirit in the show. She marries Greg, who is an uptight lawyer. The show was created by Chuck Lorre, who is also the creator of The Big Bang Theory, which provided us with a nice clip for the discussion last week. So it looks like that Chuck Lorre has some interest in Eastern religion, since he makes reference to Buddhists and Hindus. But for us, Dharma is not a person. In Buddhism, Dharma means law. It can mean the law of the universe or tradition taught by the Buddha. And when we think about those teachings, we think about the Four Noble Truths, which are foundational to Buddhism. Number one is that all life is suffering, or dukkha. Matthews defines dukkha as the suffering of humans and other sentient beings. The second noble truth is that the cause of suffering is craving, or tanha. The third noble truth is that the end of suffering is getting rid of craving and grasping, and to overcome suffering, Buddhists must follow the Eightfold Path. Now we can divide the Eightfold Path into three areas: wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental development. First, right view and right aim can be classified as wisdom. Right speech, right action, and right living all fall under the category of ethical conduct. And that gives us a chance to think about how many religions have an influence on the ethics of a society, whether everyone in that society practices that religion or not. Some people may not describe themselves as religious, but they could describe themselves as ethical. So those two ideas are very similar. And finally, in talking about the Eightfold Path, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration are areas of mental development that are achieved through meditation. One form of meditation is called koan. In Zen Buddhism, koans are problems used in meditations designed to destroy ordinary logical ways of thinking. And one example of a koan is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Buddhists spend days and hours meditating on the question, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Now the question defies logic, but that's the point. It helps inspire the Zen Buddhists to think about life differently. And in the comic book Wolverine First Class, the title or character goes to a man named Shang-Chi seeking advice. And Shang-Chi is going to provide him with a koan. Wolverine has a problem. He has to face his old nemesis Sabretooth again. This time the stakes are high because Sabretooth has kidnapped Kitty Pryde. Shang-Chi gives Wolverine a koan. He picks up an apple and asks Wolverine what it is. He promises that he will hit him 30 times if he says it's an apple. And if he says it's not an apple, he'll still hit him 30 times. So the two end up fighting, and Wolverine has no idea how to solve the koan. But later, when he faces Sabretooth, he doesn't charge into battle. Meditating on the koan has made him strong enough to resist the urge to go berserker on his enemy. He easily defeats Sabretooth. When he returns to Shang-Chi and is once again asked about the apple, he simply eats it. Shang-Chi proclaims that he is the master. Logically, Wolverine knew that he needed to fight Sabretooth, but the koan gave him a different way to approach his adversary, and Wolverine became the master of himself. Zen Buddhist ideas can also be seen in the movie The Matrix. There are ideas from Christianity in the movie too. In the film, Neo has to let go of his view of reality and realize who he truly is and what the Matrix really is. Like the Buddha, he is dissatisfied with his life, but he still needs to let go of everything that connects him to the world of the Matrix. And interestingly, Keanu Reeves, who plays Neo in the Matrix, also starred as Buddha in the film Little Buddha. Now, while the Matrix is an extreme reality check, the Buddha was seeking the middle path. On the one hand, he saw Brahmins who were concerned with worldly endeavors, and on the other hand, he saw ascetics who dedicated themselves to denying their bodies. The Buddha chose the middle path to avoid these extremes. And we can think about how religions react to one extreme or the other. And so this is a key feature in a lot of religions. And some people are often looking for a middle path. And as we learn more about different varieties of religions, think about how people maybe have chosen one extreme or another, or have tried to feel like they are in the middle. One of the things to remember about Buddhism is that it also presented a path for those not born on the high end of the socioeconomic system. A son from a poor family could become a monk, honoring his parents by following the Buddha. So that freed him from the caste system and from the Hindu idea of samsara, because it's reinterpreted in Buddhism. In spite of the Buddha's choice of the middle path, Buddhism branched off into two major divisions, Mahayana and Theravada. This week, when you're writing your paper, pay special attention to the chart on page 126 when comparing the two. Now, when you write your paper, think about this. I'm not just looking for you to tell me what Matthew says. I'm asking you to think about the implications of each belief system. For example, Mahayana Buddhists believe that Buddha is a savior, whereas Theravada Buddhists believe that, to quote Matthews, the Buddha is not a god, but the very highest human. What's important about that difference? Well, does the idea that Buddha is not a god fit the definition of religion that you prepared for the class in week 1? And another question you might ask is, why did Mahayana Buddhism catch on in China, but Theravada Buddhism did not? Also be aware of different levels of involvement in Buddhism. On the one hand, we have the bodhisattvas, who are people qualified to enter nirvana, but who, out of compassion for others, remain available to help others. And then we also have the laity. These people are not part of the religious leadership, but they play an active role in a religion. Most members of a religion fall into the category of the laity, and they provide support to the leaders of religion. So we can see people who comprise the laity in other religions as well. Now on to a bit about religion and politics. The main leader of Tibetan Buddhism is known as the Dalai Lama. Matthews notes that the term Lama means supreme being, and it's comparable to the term Guru in Indian Buddhism, and it's a priest in Tibetan Buddhism. Now from the map here, we can see that Tibet is near India and China, and it's important to understand the geography here. The Dalai Lama is known for being a peaceful person because he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989. And we know that China has often encroached on other areas, and this has become a problem for Tibet. And the Dalai Lama, it's important to remember, is not only a religious figure, but he is also a political figure because he's played a role in government affairs. In fact, he's seen as the true leader of Tibet. Now, in 1951, the Dalai Lama made an agreement with China stating that China would rule over Tibet. The Dalai Lama later denounced the agreement and went into exile. From exile, he has criticized China for violating the human rights of Tibetans. The Chinese have claimed political sovereignty over Tibet, but they also have attempted to control its religion. They want to say who will be the next incarnation of the Dalai Lama, because the Lama is reborn. Once one Lama dies, a new Lama is born. Now, this is problematic because the Chinese government is trying to control the people of Tibet through religion. If they name the Lama, they control the Lama. One more pop culture reference here. Notice that Buddhism appears in many places, and in the 4th season of King of the Hill, Buddhist monks come seeking a Lama. They think that they may have found the reincarnated Lama, and they believe that the Lama is Bobby Hill. If you've seen the show, Bobby is a bit different from other people, and his body's kind of shaped like the Buddha, so that adds to the fun of the show. The main point is that Buddhism shows up quite a bit in American pop culture, from The Matrix to King of the Hill. But we've got to move back once again from the more comic value of pop culture representation of Buddhism and talk not just about politics, but something even more serious. In an article dated to July 2013, Time magazine declares a Burmese monk named Warathru to be the Burmese bin Laden. Although Buddhists are often known for being peaceful people, especially the monks, Warathru refuses to allow Muslims to encroach on Buddhist territory in Burma. And there on the map, you can see the location of Burma. The Burmese bin Laden deviates from the picture we have of Buddhists. We read in the chapter about Buddhists. We've probably seen Buddhists on television, seen monks chanting or being peaceful. It may have seen some monks fighting in kung fu movies, but in general we think them to be a peaceful group. So we usually associate them with peace and meditation, but Warathru has different ideas. According to the Time magazine article, now is not the time for calm, he says. He spends 90 minutes describing the many ways in which he detests the minority Muslims in his Buddhist majority land. He says now is the time to rise up to make your blood boil. The Buddhist bin Laden from Burma is concerned that Islam is encroaching too much on his faith. Muslims are breeding so fast, he says, and they are stealing our women, raping them. They would like to occupy our country, but I won't let them. We must keep Myanmar, that's Burma, must keep the land Buddhist. Warathru justifies his actions. He says that Buddhists can't go on the offensive, but they can protect and defend their community. Warathru's attitude makes many people wonder what the Buddha would think of his actions. And as we come to a close, once again we have a list of key terms to help us focus on the chapter. In particular, you should focus on Mahayana and Theravada because those are the key terms for this week's paper. But don't forget to focus on samsara because we have the Hindu idea of samsara, but now Buddhism has adapted and changed the definition just a bit. So pay attention to all of these key terms. And finally, I offer a few last questions to consider. Questions about science and religion or women in religion are always particularly interesting. You could do a nice comparative study of how different religions treat women. But that's all for now. Don't forget to post to the discussion board as early as possible so that others can respond, and I look forward to reading your posts.